So we finally returned to Centaurus' story. Um, this happened a long time ago, and I like to always say that these stories are very sort of not told by me, that they write themselves, and they really do. I was planning on doing this right after episode 15, the man I became, or the man I was to the beast I became. And honestly, it didn't happen because it just didn't feel natural, I guess. Look, I pretty much backseat drive this shit pretty much. The car is driving itself, and I'm just backseat directing and making sure it doesn't run up someone's ass, essentially. So, what happened? Centaurus, that was my main character, got badly wounded in one of the stories. I think it might have been episode 15. And he's been out of the fight ever since. And he was kind of okay, and then he fell greatly ill, and they found out that he was cursed by a Reachman blade that had nicked him and poisoned his soul and blood, and some Daedric mumbo-jumbo bullshit. And, he was dying. And he asked Serana to turn him into a vampire so get back out in the field. And this episode covers that. It covers his revival. This is a story I've been waiting to tell for a long time, but I had to get through some other shit, obviously, with what I did with Morthal, and then that, and finally leading back to this story. Now, it is a brand new sort of series, like a season 2 or book 2, because I thought, why not start something where we end off? Doesn't make much sense, but I kind of want to end it on an even number of 20, and so we get to a point to where, the story really picks up episode 15, or whatever one it was. It might have been earlier, it might have been 12 or 13, and it kind of ends with Centaurus, because a lot happens in this. I mean, Ragni accepts to save him, and this is kind of the consequences of that, because at the end of the day, no matter what you do in life, it's good or bad, there will be consequences that follow. Someone will no doubt be hurt or jealous or this and that, no matter what you do, and it always comes back to bite you in the ass, and I think it falls down to Ragni's age. She's obviously matured quite a bit in her story, but she's still young and doesn't want Centaurus to die, so she basically accepts him becoming a vampire. And before all that, she was a bloody vampire hunter, and she was also a worshipper, or no, not worshipper, a champion of Meridia. And that's definitely changed some things, through her story, throwing him to Molag Bol to be saved. I mean, she's essentially playing God with his life, and the consequences of that were seen in episode 20, The Ashes of My Destiny. So, but again, there was still a story in the background happening. I did show off a bit of Centaurus, what was going on in that story, and we finally get to that. We finally get to see him come back, because he's been out of the fight for a long time, and all that came from a dream. Like, I was trying to, I think, I don't know what episode it was, but I was trying to have Ragni have dreams of Elduin killing all her friends, which eventually lines up to why she fights Elduin alone, that she doesn't want to see her friends die. And we see, I kept trying it and it was pissing me off, but then I saw Centaurus get thrown around like a wet, noodle, and I was like, oh shit, I'll keep that. That she has a dream, she's worried about Centaurus being hurt, and I wasn't going to follow through with it, but then when I gave him control of being an NPC, basically he got wounded, he got put down on his knees. I was like, holy shit, I'll actually keep that, I'll keep it, that's awesome. And then the idea for the vampire and the curse scene came much later on, so none of it was planned at all. It just happened. And I love stories like that where I'm not in full control. And here we are right now with the night of his turning. I wanted it to really match up to the day or the night. Just have all these details collide. Like, obviously I pay a lot of attention to the shit that I put in it because they're details. And I wanted this to kind of happen on that night of her wedding, so it kind of all mixed and played well together with time and with story and all that sort of crap, that the day of the wedding would be the day that the shit goes bad. It all comes colliding together, and I thought that would be a good date for it. Even though I did redo that story, I still wanted the 16th to be the night of the wedding. There's an older chapter that I should have just renamed it and called it something else, because I probably would have done better. But there's a chapter 53, Until Death Do We Part. There's the old one, and there's a new one, chapter 53, which I think is a lot better, but it's got nowhere near enough views, such as YouTube and storytelling. And we finally now get into the really meaty, greedy parts of the ending of that chapter where he was badly wounded. From moments from death to being rebirthed to a monster. Now, Cecilia gets up to this point where she gets to the courtyard and she feels this coldness, like this pure just darkness watching her. She feels frightened. She feels like a little girl stuck in a storm again. Something's hunting her. And it worries the shit out of her, obviously foretelling what is to come. Because I've always sold this part that Ragnar's companions can always feel something. They can, they feel a weird presence around her, towards her, and all these different things in the stories, and they kind of all feel the threat approaching that will one day, or a day later, will do some serious damage. And this is what Cecilia's feeling. She's feeling the future, pretty much. She's feeling the next night of what's about to happen. And she doesn't know why, obviously, because she can still see good at night time, even if it's raining. And this lightning strike goes off before I go in. And I was like, holy shit, dude, that was so natural. Like, imagine that. You're frightened, you're scared, and a massive boom goes off in the sky. You would shit bricks. And I thought, well, natural storytelling, I'll keep it. And that sort of stuff. So she's kind of feeling what's happening, and she's getting a bit of doubt. She doesn't know why she's feeling this, and she's a bit worried about it. But she's going to the prison to retrieve a snack for Centaurus. And she goes to visit an old friend that she would have, no doubt met quite a bit in her previous life as a headhunter when delivering bounties to Solitude. Because Cecilia wasn't the one to ever bring someone back alive. So she'd always deliver the heads, and she'd get paid for it, and she would have met Askar and plenty of other headsmen before him, in the last 170 plus years, or 180 plus years, or whatever, however long she's been doing it. And what's actually pretty cool about this, which as you can see, she mentions that she felt weird coming to this place, and that could have been Topher in jail before she becomes a Thieves Guild character, or even Centaurus, who was a guard in here, and no idea how important they were. But across the thing right there, in that part that she's looking through the door, is actually, I don't know if it's a mod that does this, most it's likely a mod, but Sabiel's in there. There's a dead dude on the table, and she's feeding, so I was like, that is so cool. Basically, Cecilia comes for a feed, and then she comes to get food for Centaurus, and she looks into the thing, and then there's another vampire there that obviously was mentioned in the game with the High Elf saying if you go to the prisons, you're going to get a unwanted surprise, and that is right there, the surprise. The other vampire. She doesn't much care because, to her, anyone that's a criminal, that just hurt and killed people don't deserve to live. But we get to really discover what kind of, I've always kind of sold that Cecilia doesn't remember everything from the past. I mean, she's lived too long and she's focused way too much on certain things. A lot of her memories are gone or faded, or, they might be changed. And I call it blood amnesia. Kind of got the idea from League of Legends with, I forgot his name. He's like a vampire, he's like a blood mage character. Vladimir, I think it might be called. I think his name's Vladimir. It could be, yeah, I think so. So she's got like blood amnesia where she's just lived for too long and she starts to remember things, and she remembers the Grey Fox, and then she kind of brings up Topher, how they're very similar in certain aspects. But this is pretty much her just buying food. Now, I did show this guy off, or showed his corpse off in episode 20, and that was kind of just a setup for all this. Basically goes to prison, finds a piece of shit that's like a murderer, a rapist, your typical bandit, takes him. But this time, this is like the first time she's ever enthralled somebody, like she's used her vampire powers to enslave someone's mind. She doesn't like the vampire's powers and that sort of evil, but in this case, she can't just go and drop him and murder him and then carry his body off to the temple. It's gonna look suspect as shit with the Imperial soldiers patrolling around if she's carrying a body. It doesn't look so suspect if she's got one tied up and they're moving towards the temple. It still looks suspect, but I mean, dragging a body out just doesn't look right, so it's best to kind of have him walk in there voluntarily. I wouldn't say voluntarily, since she's enthralled him, but this is not the first time she's ever done this, because like I've said, whenever she goes bounty hunting, she doesn't spare anybody. She kills all her targets. The only person she spared was Topher, which was the Nightingale character. And she kind of talks about that previously, about that, that she keeps messing around with Freya, that she'll regret it. Which, the coming night kind of does end up losing her head. I mean, she was destined to lose her head in Solitude, but fate, or you could say the Lady of Luck, intervened, and she dodged it. But eventually, she lost her head in solitude. I want to say this guy is the proper victim of my last three stories. Chapter 53, episode 20. I thought, was he mine? No, I don't think he was. This guy's been absolutely bullied. He's just been absolutely just mind raped by vampires. I mean, the contractor pretty much does this to him, but worse, and then sends him off to die. Zarita charms him and knocks him out, kind of, and all this sort of stuff, because they won't let people in because of the wedding, but the vampire goes in, charms him, and does the job. This scene, I was going to basically have her walk up to the 8 divines and kind of be like, pray to your gods before I send you to them. But he's kind of mind-fucked, so he can't really do that. And so I decided to change it to talk about someone else from her past, the Holy Crusader. How she gets into talking about who he was back in the past, that she had laid with him many times. And there were times in battle where he was just fierce and ferocious. I mean, there was zero fear, pure anger, the Palinor madness. And then there was times when, she'd go into temples and find him just sitting there with his eyes closed, meditating, at pure peace. And, it kind of weirded around that sometimes during battle he was just bloodthirsty, just absolute pure chaos. And then there were times like this where he was just silent and quiet and, peaceful. One of the last stories I did with Cecilia at the helm was the Wolf Queen, and she came down here to basically kill the Wolf Queen, Patema Septim. And I thought it'd be a perfect place to turn Centaurus, because nowhere else to be safe. Can't do it inside of his home because of the children, and obviously the people in the city. And there's only really one back end way out of Solitude. You've got the watchtower, the windmill, but this is a perfect place to kind of turn Centaurus, because there's no one immediate in the direction that he can smell or hear. And there's an exit right outside of Solitude that leads to a cliff face, which would be the perfect place. And obviously she's been here, she's done this, she came here to kill the Queen of Death, and she comes back here to help revive someone close to Ragni. So, look, honestly, this would just ended up being the perfect place. I mean, like I said, all these stories just make themselves. I was always trying to figure out where would be the appropriate place to turn him. And this just ended up being in the back of my mind. I was like, holy shit, that makes a lot of sense. And so the place where she killed Potamo is the place she helps revive Centaurus. They get there, he's already been turned, but he's still asleep, dead. It's because Serana turns him. She turns him as soon as he passes out, right? She gets there, and Centaurus' eyes are already closed, and he's on shutdown, so a bite works, physically turns him into a vampire, but he doesn't wake up. It's probably just his body recuperating, trying to, he was near death, so close to death that he was probably halfway through the door before he was brought back and then thrown back through the door. And so he just needs some time to recuperate his body to kind of work out what's going on before he wakes back up. And he's dead, but he's also dead. It makes no sense to me, and that's just kind of how I figured it. Serana consumes some of his blood in this story, and it makes her violently sort of ill. It dampens that, because this is a cursed blade. This is cursed, poison, Daedric blood. His blood was off, and if she would have drank maybe so much of it, she could have died. And this is the reasoning why I made sure she was an easy kill by the contractor in chapter 53, because she had consumed Centaurus' blood while saving him, and it really dampened her and weakened her. It wasn't just that, but Serana had dropped a lot of her natural instinct as a vampire, as a bloodthirsty creature of the night. She became a bit more of a compassionate, loving person, which kind of weakened her. I like to think vampires, they thrive when they are what they are. And this is the reason Cecilia thrives, because she's still a vampire at heart. She will still butcher and murder people that she thinks are evil and twisted. So she's still very strong, but Serana lost a lot of that when she fell in love with Ragni and tried to more emulate towards Ragni, because she wanted to feel more like her and be more like her and make Ragni a bit more comfortable around her, and it kind of just weakened her natural powers, sort of thing. So while Centaurus is still knocked out, and I really wanted to just kill some time, because I don't know how, at this point I don't know how long the story's going to go for. So it's just, basically Cecilia updates the reader of this location, because the reader wasn't here then. She was still out travelling Tamriel as a Redguard with her girlfriend. And Cecilia tells her about the Wolf Queen, this events of why they're here, sort of thing. And that was just essentially for me to kill time. That's all it was, to add some more time to the story before I could figure out how Centaurus is going to wake. And of course, I figured it out. He just wakes up and he jumps into a good feed. Now, he does become a little bit hungry. He does become a little famished when he wakes up, and he just starts munching there, man. Like, he just starts feeding. And I'd imagine that they're obviously cannibals, vampires, because you're eating flesh which contains blood. So it's your physical sort of meaty, like we drink water and we eat food. So again, be the same sort of thing for them. Human flesh would be contained full of blood, and they're getting a bit of a past of their turnings. And Cecilia talks about how she enjoyed her first feed on slaughtering Mythic Dawn agents and butchering them, and Serana gets a bit emotional about slaves because she regrets what she is, and that's, like I said, reasons to why she's kind of weaker than she should have been. Not just because Centaurus's blood poisoned her, but because she denies her nature as a vampire. She's ashamed of what she is. She regrets what she is. But she doesn't change herself because essentially she doesn't want to be weak, and she doesn't want to drag Ragni behind, or think that if she's not a vampire lord, she won't be able to protect her. Because either way, you fight dragons, you're going to get killed. You fight dragons as a vampire, you get turned to ash. You fight dragons as a mortal, you get lit on fire and turned into a barbecue. But at the end of the day, I think that Serana would always pick fighting with her strength over her weaknesses, simply because there's a better chance of her to protect Ragni. And if she doesn't get killed by a dragon at the end of the day, she gets killed by something that takes her blood. A bit of the Venom treatment, Someone drinks her blood, becomes her, but completely thrives as a vampire, and just their power is just poof. A bit like a Twilight thing, where like vampire fledglings are stronger when they turn. But morally, the fact that if a vampire is really encouraged by their bad, horrible, evil behaviour, it just makes them really strong, sort of thing. And again, that's kind of my description of how I think Serana got absolutely bullied in that fight and killed because of several different reasons. Well, two in fact: poisoning of blood and the denying of what she truly is. If it seems like this story took so many different sort of directions, like at first it was like we got to train him, and then it was like, oh shit, we should just kill him, that's because of me, because I don't know which way I wanted to go with this story. And it kind of feels natural, because it kind of puts Cecilia into this doubtful space where she doesn't want to leave Ragni's side, especially after turning her, and it also gives Serana a reason to bugger off back as soon as she figures out what she wants to do with him. They're just going to cure him and get him back into the fight. Serana's like, yep, okay, because her plan was to follow Centaurus and help train him, because it's very personal for her turning people, like it was for Ragni, the Dawn Guard questline. And the same thing with Centaurus. But when Cecilia told her that she was just going to cure him, Serana realised she wasn't really needed, and that she was feeling a bit off, and she really wanted to go and talk to Ragni after their meeting, after the wedding. And that's kind of the excuse to why she left. And I think she was praying at the 8 divine shrines before she heard battle outside and the smell of blood. She went to investigate, and she found a vampire lord slaughtering legionaries before she was cut down and thrown into the fire. I needed to find a way for them to stay the day, obviously, for that meeting with Ragni and Serana. And obviously the idea of Centaurus being knocked out for so long was because essentially, he got turned, but his body stayed asleep for hours before eventually resurrecting. And by then it was too late to move out because the sun was only a couple hours away. So they had to wait for the next night. They couldn't go back because the wedding was on. And they couldn't go forward because the sun was out, and Centaurus, being directly on that would be a horrible idea. Probably make him hungrier, make him more irrational, angry, this sort of thing, blah, blah, blah. And so Cecilia knows that Ragni's going to end up being here somehow. She just knows it. She knows Ragni very well. She's very informative. Like, she watches people and kind of predicts what they're going to do. And she knows Ragni's young and sometimes impulsive and immature here or there. She just knows somehow she's going to find a way to the wedding, even though they left her there at Morthal that night. She's still somehow going to find a way here, and again, she does. But this is kind of the time, I think, where Serana informs Cecilia, because I forgot to do this is my bad, that I'm getting old, guys. I'm 31 years old, okay? I was 17 when this game came out. This is where she informs Cecilia that she didn't destroy her blood. And I mean, it's a bit late, but again, I put it down to having to quickly save Centaurus and being sick from consuming his blood that she just forgot, or that just wasn't on top of her mind. And Cecilia kind of freaks out. She's like, what the fuck? What do you mean your blood was stolen? And this really scares the shit out of Cecilia, because she knows Serana's a very compassionate, kind, and loving, and she really likes her for it, but she knows how dangerous she could be. They all know how dangerous Serana could be if she was like a full-on vampire of the past, like how she described to Ragni in Sky Ruler Temple. Is that the one? Cloud? Sky Ruler. You know, they know how dangerous her bloodline is, and the idea of that getting out there into someone's hands, just it makes Cecilia drop a brick in her pants, pretty much. I mean, you couldn't blame her, because anyone with her blood that hasn't got her kindness is just an absolute dangerous threat. And unfortunately, it falls into the worst of hands, which are the lasting consequences for Serana and our Nightingale, and of course our Lady of Light and Hope. I realise with all these stories that a lot of this is connected to vampires and obviously the Wolf Queen and stuff like that, because she was governed with necromancers, werewolves, and of course vampires. I think I might have added that one myself, I'm pretty sure. I think I did that one. But there was vampires in this tomb trying to resurrect her, so that's why I made the first coven that tried to resurrect the vampires. The vampires that were here were also the ones trying to resurrect her back to being the Wolf Queen. So a lot of it, all the sort of hoops and sort of, I guess, strings of the story interlap with each other when I try to make them seem like you're actually reading a book. Now, of course, Cecilia is frightened by this notion, and she thinks of a plan, and it's straight up, you know, it's like, if Serana's bloodline's out there, I can't afford to fuck around. I need to be by Ragni's side, especially if her blood's been stolen from Solitude and Ragni ends up here. And she does come up with a plan, and that is to simply just screw Train and Centaurus. She doesn't need to do that. She can take him straight to Morthal and get him cured like Ragni was. Because they all know the stories of how Ragni was once a vampire and how she cured herself. So that's Cecilia's plan, to get Centaurus to Morthal, cure him of vampirism, and throw him back into the field where he's backed by Ragni's side, the happily ever after, the easy choice. But the easy choice is never a good thing, and as we know, it didn't really work out for him. But her main goal was now the safety of Ragni instead of the safety of Centaurus. Even though she gave Ragni her word she'd train him, she doesn't really need to if they can cure him straight away. Now, some time has passed. I mean, half the day's passed. Eventually, Serana has a conversation with Ragni, which we saw in episode 20. She feels a lot more calmer and wants to go back and talk to Ragni now. She's not so angry with her or Sigurd. And Cecilia basically informs her of a plan to cure him, and she's like, oh, rightio, I'm not really needed, and I can go and spend the night with Ragni. They sit down by the fire and have a conversation and talk about our problems. Unfortunately, it didn't go to that sort of plan, and some shit happened, as we've seen in episode 20, and that is that. And this is the last time I was going to see Serana. I was trying to film a scene where Serana walks off, and Cecilia just watches her until she fades through the door, and you never see her again, but she didn't fucking work, and I swear to God, I hate Serana. I absolutely fucking hate her. The reason why I got rid of her when Ragni became the Dragonborn was because she just wasn't doing what she was told. She was being a pain in the ass, and I was like, fuck this, you're out of the story until I want to bring you back. Until we eventually returned to the Dawnguard questline was when I brought Serana back, but I pissed her off because she was pissing me off. And I put into the SDA Discord, I kept asking, how do I kill her? Because I couldn't kill her. I just wanted to butcher her on the screen. I was the profanities that came out of my mouth making this, and when she pisses me off, it's out of this world. If I was to put that shit up on YouTube, it'd be flared and deleted by YouTube. I shit you not. I'm like angry Centaurus while trying to film with this bitch. She drives me nuts. And when I didn't get exactly her walking to the door because she wouldn't do it because she's being an absolute cunt. I was like, fuck it, I'll just take half this scene, half that scene, got what I got, and Cecilia just walks off without looking back and pandering off the last time she'll see Serana, and I was like, maybe that's just natural, goodbye, see you later, walks off, pisses off, doesn't see her again, and unfortunately she dies. But at that very point of her walking through the door, I was so glad to be done with Serana. I was like, you deserve what you got, you fucking bitch. And it's probably half the reason I killed her, because she just gives me too much trouble. Half it's my own fault for downloading the mod and then using the mod and the voice, even though it said, I didn't know this beforehand, but it said do not use for AI training. So I fucking hate Serana. I really do. I hate Serana. She is an absolute pain in the fucking ass. I tried to walk off, turn around, watch her walk through the door, but it just didn't work, and I was just fucking pissed, dude. I just wanted to I just wanted to separate her head from her shoulders. I was in like one of those like just feral moods, and if people on YouTube heard me say that shit, I'd probably have minus subscribers. It's just this bit right here. Oh mate, absolute drives me mental. And I'm so glad she's gone. I'm so glad she's gone. I'm just so pleasantly happy. Centaurus has some new gear, some warlock robes to kind of hide him in the darkness and from the sun if they're out there. The corpse is currently in the coffin and they're ready to move out. It's time to piss off to Morthal. I can't pronounce the word, like Helgenmarsh or Solitude and Morthal have stupid hold names. So yeah, the neighbouring, thankfully, the neighbouring holds. So maybe it's an hour walk or an hour or two from Solitude to Morthal, to their territories. Maybe even quicker for a vampire at night. But it was time to bugger off and get this party on the road. And yeah, the rest of it was just natural storytelling. I just decided to follow what felt natural, and I do all these scenes right here, like on the spot. I don't write them out. The way that I do all this entire story, this entire everything, is I just start with an idea and I follow it. And that's what I do with all these scenes, these sort of comic book motion scenes where they have conversations. I take a screenshot, I write something in that kind of fits, and the rest is history. But let's get outside and watch the beauty of the night and the crispy edge of the sunlight creak away. So with this, it's nighttime for vampires. It's still visibly got some daylight around the place, of course. The sun is gone, but its light kind of hovers over the top of it. And this is a favourite time of these vampires, where they can somewhat see the sunlight without being hit by it, and it reminds them of their mortality, but also, those sort of things. And this is the first time Centaurus has ever seen this, how beautiful the night sky is as a vampire, Like, I always play with vampires with their night vision on, because, again, their eyes do look nocturnal, and they're meant to be nocturnal creatures, so I thought, why not make it a bit more immersive in this story, where they actually see better at night, and they see really shit at daytime. And this is what I went through for that. And, again, I've decided from this point on to tell the stories, especially outside it's dark. You can't see shit in the darkness, especially when they're talking. That they would all have a conversation with night vision, because I don't really do much of that. I thought it'd be the appropriate time to do that. But yeah, they kind of get into conversation. Cecilia talks about forgetting what the sun colour looks like. She's a bit, she's the longest there. She's been a vampire for too long that she has no idea what it's like to be mortal ever again. And to activate their powers, she goes bat form. She jumps off, and the Centaurus is just blown away. He's like, "What the fuck?" Obviously, I can't have people swear in this. I did accidentally have that in one of my stories where I forgot to remove it. But he's like, holy shit, I'm not doing that. And Zarita's just kind of laughing at him. He's a bit new to it all. She's now like the big sister sort of thing. And she's like, you got to jump, dude. And if you don't, Cecilia will rip you into an asshole, and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, I've got quite a good respect for self-preservation. Even like, he doesn't know the power that he has in him right now. He has no idea of how powerful he is. And he jumps off the side, he's like, fucking, what? He's a soldier. He's lived his life, at the edge of a sword. So he's not he's used to defying death all the time. But, throwing yourself off a mountain isn't really something a soldier's going to do, right? It's just not a very smart idea, but, he's got to follow Zarita's and their instructions, and if Cecilia can do it, he can do it. And I mean, end of the day, man, if you lived your entire life as a mortal and the very first night as a vampire you're going to jump off a friggin' mountain, you're going to be questioning your life, even though you're no longer alive. But he's like, yep, rightio, this isn't a great idea, but I'll do it. And he runs back to amp himself up, and he jumps off the side. I did think about doing the bat form. It would have been pretty cool. I think about that. I probably should have done that, where he turns into a bat, and he could have been like, what the shit was that? And Cecilia could have explained a bit of what he was, that it's a natural power, blah, blah, blah. But I can do that in a later story. I can do it then. Someone did say the whole bloody hell thing. It's obviously known for the English. But I think a lot of people say it like, I'll go like, bloody hell. And that's an Australian accent. I'll go, bloody hell. I think I just kind of remove the H from it. And Centaurus' accent is American. And so he doesn't sound like he's bloody hell. Bloody hell, gov. And anyway, so we get into a conversation with, Cecilia sort of, barking some orders at him, trying to insert her dominance. And Zarita comes through, and she's just making fun of us. Because, they're quite close from time to time. And Zarita underplays it, kind of makes Cecilia look like a little bitch. And then Cecilia gets angry because she's trying to insert her dominance. And she's like, oh, I shouldn't have brought you here. And then Zarita's like, dude, what the fuck? You're the one that wanted me to be here. Have a little argument. Centaurus sees something familiar off in the distance and just starts walking towards it. As you can see really soon, his eyes will peek up and he's looking at a certain familiar object, and he just doesn't pay attention to what's going on. And he just walks right past these two women arguing, and he follows something that as a dream. And this was a long time ago to this story, where basically Centaurus wakes up from a dream, from a vision. And I forgot to actually remove that. Well, I screwed that up, but oh well. He walks towards one of my ESO characters' kind of graveyard, the vestige. And my vestige was called Centaurus, and he was an Imperial that fought the Imperial City and ended up the whole Cold Harbor thing, and ended up shooting outside of Morrowind for the Pack side. That's just what I follow with it, but I don't like to leave too much known about it all. The vestige is meant to be someone that was unknown, sort of thing. But the rumour is that the vestige was, Centaurus Farm, the legend of it was blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like it's not really a known fact, but it's just more of a legend. And he talks about how he got his weapons, the steel and the shield that he has. This is where he found his signature weapons for his character, the Dragon Knight sword and shield. Because, again, my vestige was a Imperial Dragon Knight, and that's why you got the 3rd era Imperial flag right there. And this is a little showcase of him finding his weapons and taking them. And I just thought I was close to it. I thought, why not bring it into the story? Be a bit niche. We get to learn that Cecilia was actually a Vanguard. And this wasn't a back thought for me. This wasn't just brand new. I've always seen her as a Vanguard. Just she's kind of kept a lot of herself private, or if it's not important to what's going on around her, she doesn't care about it. But she finally reveals that she was once a Vanguard, and it was during the time of the Oblivion Crisis, around the end of it, that she was made one of them. And she didn't stick around for too long before eventually leaving the Empire and trying to find, Darius, and then not being able to find him because he went off to an Oblivion Gate and never came back, and joined the Vigilance. And Centaurus remembers kind of seeing this as a kid, the annals of the Vanguards, and that was a Cecilia there in recent history, this and that, whatever. But we get to learn a lot more about Cecilia with this chapter. She does take the helm of the story, and she does get a bit more personal about her past. Remembers quite a few more things about the Oblivion Crisis, and a bit about who she was and who she is. And we get to see that, which I really like doing, because like I said, I haven't done Cecilia's story in a long time. The journeys of the Dragonborn and all that focused on Ragni and her teammates, but mainly on Ragni. This is a chance to really show her off in the current time of the story, to have her take the helm. Cecilia has this suspicious feeling, and she looks up and she looks at the very temple that is around about the time shit might be going very bad. And, she has no idea what's going on right now, but things are probably going quite pear-shaped up there with a certain assassin and his claws ripping a new arseholes for everybody. But she has to ignore the feeling. She has to press on, because have to go and cure Centaurus, but she has this strikingly bad feeling the further she walks away from Solitude. And even though she's right underneath it, she feels great doubt. And I was going to have more kind of feel this pain, but I decided, that I'd do that in a bit of an aftermath bit later on. But they can't go through the city, they can't go through the docks, because they don't want Centaurus getting close to a person with a heartbeat. They just want to be safe as they can with it, go through the marsh and throw him in the cave, which Ragnar and Cecilia cleared out when they first met, and also the cave that Ragnar hid in before she was killed as a vampire, sort of tailing, sort of a bit of a nod to these older stories, and their familiarity. And of course, we go in the water. I mean, she says she shivers when she's in warm water. I mean, vampires are the very opposite of what life is, so why not? I mean, if you were in warm water as a vampire, you'd kind of shiver, would you not? I mean, cold water would be beautiful for you, you're cold-blooded, where warm water would be like, ooh, yuck, you get me out of this thing. And she sees a very familiar statue, and obviously this plays a big nod into her past with the Holy Crusader, because, at least to me, I've always seen the Holy Crusader as the avatar of Shag-Gorath. It's kind of opposite, you know. Shag-Gorath gave the champion of Cyrodiil all the powers to fight off against Jiggalag, but in doing so would also reincarnate him eventually. So you save the Shivering Isles, but eventually I've always imagined the champion would fall into madness, would return to Tamriel, but the hair would start to turn silver or white, and their eyes would start to change. And since it's Imperial Male and Shag-Gorath, the exact same voice actor, I'd imagine it'd be like, "My name is Aurelius, and I am a jittering mad bastard." You know, his accent would randomly change, and he'd find himself giggling in the reflection and slowly turning to madness before he disappeared. Things like that. And so this is just a sort of nod, and obviously Cecilia's heard the rumours of of Minerva's theory that Shag-Gorath was Darius in disguise and was there to stop Dagon's plans from destroying the world just because he wanted to shit stir a Daedric prince and he didn't want the humans to be all slaughtered. But Cecilia doesn't like that idea. She really doesn't, because she was with him. You know, she was having sex with him. She saw him cry. She saw him angry. She saw him very human. And the Daedra, no matter if they can try and imitate us, could never become us. They can't feel real emotions and things like that. And she knows that very well. Of course, Minerva believes that it was, the Shag-Gorath that entire time. But us as the players, obviously, we know that's what the player eventually becomes. That's what I believe, anyway. I believe that the champion of Cyrodiil becomes Shag-Gorath, and Cecilia's kind of just sideswiped herself. She's like, we were in a hurry, we better be quick. And then she gets distracted, and this keeps happening to this poor bird, she just keeps getting distracted. Hopefully, no one's ever, I did put a picture up on my Discord, and one of my subscribers, very big critic, bloke called Carter, and he noticed it. But if you look back, up here, look who's sitting on top of the head. It's our friendly neighbourhood, gibbering mad god! So that's him right there. That's Shag-Gorath just kind of sitting up there and watching Cecilia walk off. Because, there's some familiarity between them. He might be a mad god, but he's still somewhat... A part of him still remembers what he was and who he was before any of this commotion. So he's just reappeared to watch Cecilia, the old love of his life, walk off in the distance, to keep an eye on her. And that's why, obviously, the Daedra are there, why Starter and Delora are there to watch over Cecilia. But Cecilia's basically like, piss off, leave me alone. If you follow me, I'll kill you. And they're not going to be stupid. They have a mission to protect Cecilia, but also Minerva, because Minerva is the bloody... she's the champion of the Mad God. So they're in close proximity normally, so they can watch over them both. Even though a lot of them were killed in episode 20. Now we get close to a very familiar spot, and Cecilia starts to feel this creeping sort of feeling that she felt a long time ago. Oh, sorry, not long. She starts to feel like that creeping feeling again the closer she gets to the shack, and that is obviously the sort of the start of the quest line for the contractor, where he was kidnapped and where he woke up. And we get to return to the shack's something that you might fast travel to in your gameplay, but you never really go back inside unless you store shit there. It's kind of a useless place, and once it's done, it essentially suits a quest. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring it back into the story that Cecilia felt this great threat, the same thing she felt while she was in the courtyard, and she needed to find out what the hell was going on, why is she feeling these feelings of fear and scaring and all this sort of crap, and she gets close to it, and She needs to investigate. She's like, I'm in a rush, but we should definitely check this out. And it's obviously just a little nod to the start of the contractor's story here in Skyrim, where his quest line really starts. Right over there was actually where episode 20 happened, where they found the Dragon Priest and killed it, I'm pretty sure. But again, the fog hasn't properly set in yet, but they get... And I really wanted to change this place around, so I went into the creation kit and I removed all the lighting and I added a couple skulls to kind of make it look like the place hasn't been in... Like, yeah, because when you're in there, Astrid wakes you up and there's a fire on, there's a few lanterns. But I wanted this place to look like it'd been abandoned. You know, a proper abandoned shack. No one's been there since the contractor, so no more light sources, just skeletons of the remains of the people that he killed, and the 3 skulls of those that he killed. Well, yeah, that Astrid would have skinned him, just left him there. But yeah, just a slaughterhouse. Cecilia is just disgusted by this place. It's dried, soaked wood, rotted wood from the marsh, all the salt water, all the dried stale blood, and obviously the remains left behind of the 3 victims that the contractor slaughtered while they were tied up. Finds basically Zarita and Centaurus investigating the skulls. But Centaurus, you don't, honestly, even if it's rotted blood, you don't bring a vampire into a blood-soaked murder house. I mean, like, that's kind of the opposite effect of bringing a vegan into, like, a slaughterhouse. Watching cows and pigs and chickens get absolutely just cut up. Like, it's not good for him. Opposite effect for Centaurus, because obviously he's a vampire now, and like, hunger doesn't work the exact same way that it would for anyone naturally hungry. I mean, you could drink 1 litre of 2 litres, 3 litres of blood, and then walk into a blood-soaked building, and your entire natural instinct of feeding just reacts back up. You're going to drink more blood. Shit like that. Sort of things. We get here as Rita kind of talks about these skulls, and Cecilia notices the marking on their heads because it brings up another familiar character from her past, the Dark Brotherhood listener, and she talks about that, and Zarita's like, who is the Dark Brotherhood? Because currently in the timeline of Skyrim, they're kind of extinct. The Dark Brotherhood have been hunted down for the last 20 to 30 years, where they've been wiped out, essentially, and Skyrim is the very last sanctuary of the Dark Brotherhood. And Zarita was, she's like 20, 21, maybe 19, I don't know. She's around Ragni's age. And she wasn't alive by the time they were getting slaughtered. So doesn't know much about the Dark Brotherhood because they're not a presence to be feared. Well, within a couple hours, that's going to change. But yeah, she brings up the past, and I try to have the female Dark Brotherhood assassin, in Oblivion. It's a picture of ChatGPT tried to generate. It looks kind of shit. Should have just used the actual picture from Oblivion. But yeah, she talks about her. And, she talks about the previous character that she didn't like. She was a murderer and a bloodsucker and blah blah blah. But she's kind of like, well, she did fight with us. She did aid us and help us, and it's kind of a bit of a moral battle going in her heart of what she was and who she was and what she did, sort of thing. But it happened a long time ago, and Cecilia's kind of just thinking about all this shit lately with Darius, the Grey Fox, and the Listener, and all this sort of stuff, which is just stories for another day. But I just wanted to bring him here to basically to kind of bridge the contractor and also Cecilia's memories together and all that sort of stuff. Come back outside, and the Mortal Swamp has set in, and this was friggin' awesome, dude. Because it was proper hard to see, even for a vampire. They've got night vision to the absolute max, right? And like I said, they're designed to see far better at nighttime than mortals. And yet this fog completely just it covered up everything. You couldn't see too far in front of you. And for a vampire to be walking around at night, not being able to see what's in front of him, that's some dangerous shit. I mean, it was hard to see. For me, I was like, man, what's going on? I'm going to be walking past this, the marsh, and I've got zombie mods on, and you're going to hear them growl, and then you're going to get close to them, they're going to spot you, and you're going to hear them just thumping at you and growling at you. You're not going to see them until they're right directly in front of you. And I was like, holy shit, dude. This is going to be spooky. I mean, it'd be even more spooky for someone that can see way better at nighttime, but is now blind to the night because of it. And it turned out to be quite scary. There's probably some stuff I didn't record because it was just buggy or it took too long. But there's this moment where they're walking through and they can hear the corpses and they can hear them thudding closer towards them. and like it comes out in front of Cecilia. Within like 5 feet, she sees it, and she misses her first strike, I think, because again, naturally without this fog, she'd be able to see this thing coming out from like a mile away. But it doesn't happen in this fog. Within 5 feet, it comes out in front of her, and she misses her first strike, and she's like, I was like, holy shit, dude, that's scary when like a vampire becomes blind at nighttime. We see Centaurus in this has started to use some vampire magic because he hasn't got a weapon, and this is just a natural dead thing for him, that he's got these powers he can use, because he's not a mage, he's a warrior. But he's now got vampire abilities, so he kind of is a mage, and natural born, natural death abilities. And this is what he'll use to fight. For now. But I definitely want to see him use a lot more vampire powers. I mean, the further we're going with the story, he's going to, when he goes to block, it'll be like a bat swarm that comes up around him. He'll use a bit of vampire magic. Get back to sword and blade. Those sort of things. But I definitely, with him being a vampire, he has to be trained not just for what he is and what he has to deal with, but for the actual natural-born, natural death abilities he has, which comes from Serana. So he's now a vampire lord. There's so many things I've got to do with him, which will be fun and exciting when it gets around to it, hopefully. But I was just wandering through and talking about Zarita, and the cave popped up, and Zarita mentioned it. I was like, dude, that's so cool. Like, I wouldn't have probably spotted it if Zarita didn't mention it, because I wasn't looking at the corner of the screen, and that sort of thing. I didn't want there to be vampires in this again. I mean, I think I've killed them 3 times in this layer throughout my story. So I thought I'd change up a bit. I was going to put a bit more dialogue into this with Moleg's cult members showing up there, but I think Cecilia wasn't really in the care of getting into a 10-minute conversation about Moleg Ball cultists. She saw a bunch of corpses. She thought that basically they'd wandered in here naturally and they were stuck at the bottom, which was good for her, but the further she goes on, she realises that, it's not vampires or necessarily necromancers that have brought them back, but something far worse than both of them. Those who worship Moleg Ball. And this bastard, I don't know where he comes from, he just teleports in front of you. But whatever. This is what I wanted Ragnar to do during like her first episode or her first chapter, was to charge and just execute somebody. But Cecilia comes in, just starts dropping bodies, and I love it. This guy was meant to... that one dies. The next one of those bugs where you go to kill him but you get interrupted. And he survives that one. But then they become invulnerable and you can't kill him until another kill move. Thankfully, he didn't bug out the second time. And it was just a slaughterhouse, and it was, a statue to Moleg Ball that his worshippers had wandered into, and this is what they were. They were worshippers of Moleg Ball, necromancers and those that worship vampires and all that sort of shit. And I thought it'd change things up from being a typical vampire thing. And yeah, that sort of thing. Cecilia gets to kill some more vampires. I like to see Daedric statues or shrines that kind of act like magnets towards their worshippers and their creatures. The vampires find this place because of the statue. The undead and the necromancers found this place because of the statue. And the same thing with Nemina's statue just outside in the marsh. She's like decaying, so it just brings in more of the rotted creatures. Sort of emulates things like that. And that's just kind of what I like to see these shrines as. That Cecilia hasn't got time to destroy them because, quite simply, there is no destroyed model that I can use to make them look like they've been destroyed, but she's got more important shit to do than worry about getting a bloody hammer out and a chisel and smacking off and destroying the friggin' shrine. I don't know. They get into a conversation. Cecilia's like, you need to stay here. I'm going to go see if I can kill you. Just behave yourself. She tells Zarita if he messes up, just fucking drop him. I don't think she'd even stand a chance, to be honest with you, because of the raw power of being a vampire. But Centaurus isn't an animal. He hasn't really experienced. He's surrounded by blood and he's had a feed, so he's going to be good for a little while. And then I tried to have Zarita pick up a body and it turned into a ceiling fan. That was annoying. I was like, ugh, great. But again, she hit something and she stopped acting like a dickhead. And the blood vats mob was right there, and I was like, dude, this is going to be sick. Like, this is how they're going to, fuel up. They're going to throw the bodies in the blood vats and get blood potions while Cecilia's off doing her thing. They will basically deal with the whole feeding issue. And this variety, I was like, oh my god, I might have to refilm this. But eventually she stopped turning into a fucking yo-yo or a fidget spinner, and she actually worked, which was, reason not to refilm it. Now, at this scene, I kind of wanted Zarita to act like the sort of teacher, like the older sibling towards Centaurus, because she's recently been a vampire herself within a year, so she's not like Cecilia where she's ancient. She still remembers what it feels like to be human, and this is kind of like the bad cop, good cop sort of vibe for Centaurus, and she talks about what she knows, what Cecilia's taught her. When they die, their souls go to oblivion, and all that sort of stuff, and they're having this conversation about it all. And there's a couple of good moments in this where, Centaurus is, he's asking questions, I don't remember it all, because like I said, I'm a friggin' old dude now, I'm 31 years old, and one of the things is he asks us a question, he's like, I feel nothing, like, I don't feel pain, and feeling cold doesn't hurt anymore, and this bloodlust, how do you deal with it? He doesn't have to really worry about it for too long, because he's going to be cured, but Zarita gets into kind of teachings from Cecilia, and that is, remember who you loved and who you lost, sort of thing. And she brings up the woman that she was with before she became a vampire, and she told Centaurus to remember the people that he loved, and these are the people that he did it for. He did it, obviously he didn't want to die in a bed, so it was a bit of a selfish notion right there, but he also wanted to be around for his daughter, Luca, and he also wanted to be around for Ragni, to follow her and make sure she doesn't die, and of course for Sigurd, because he loves Sigurd, and that sort of shit. So he felt something when Zarita brought it up, remember the ones you love, because I imagine vampires being tasteless, being soulless, being, that's why I make them pale like a dead body, and their hair grey, because they lose all their colour of life, they lose what it means to be alive, the taste of food, the touch of warmth, the sort of feeling of what it means to be alive, like feeling of pain, the feeling of cold hurting you, the feeling of warmth making you feel better. They lose all of that. It becomes unknown to them over time. And Centaurus is feeling this, and he asks Zarita, how do you deal with that? And she says, remember the ones you love. And he felt something. He actually felt something warm inside. And that it made him, he was like, holy shit, you're right. Like, if I think about them, every time I put a video up on YouTube, my phone goes off. It's a fucking running joke. But he remembers them, and he feels something warm inside of his, breastplate, and that's his heart. And he's like, holy shit, you're right. Like, this will be a big thing for Centaurus going forward on, how he's able to manage being a vampire and a protector going forward. It's obviously remembering the ones he loved, remembering what made him human, is what they are as beasts, and their very nature is to dominate, destroy, kill, and violate, and all that horrible shit, because that's what they've now become. It's not just their soul and their bodies that turn, but their very nature of becoming an imprint of Molag Bal. And the way they fight that is by remembering who they were and who they loved, sort of thing. So Zarita's going to have a bit more story in this, obviously, and a bit more story going ahead in the future, and I can't wait to show you guys. I don't want to spoil anything, but she's going to have a bit more of a presence in this than the side character, or Cecilia's sort of like supporting character, things like that. There's going to be a lot more to do with her, and hopefully I'll get a couple episodes out with Centaurus, Zarita, and Cecilia in their stories before they eventually come back to the main fold. But I don't know, until then, it's all ideas until I'm physically doing it. But yes, this is what this entire bit was. Now, there's actually a point where Centaurus goes, he's like, I feel like I'm on fire. He does that, and that was actually a suggestion from one of my subscribers called Carter, who's, I think, my biggest fan, but also my biggest critic. And he's like, maybe, and then he forgot about it. He's like, maybe Centaurus should feel the end of his maker. There's like a link towards him that, if the one that created him died, that he'd somewhat feel it or know about it. I didn't want him to know about it, but obviously when he's having this conversation, and then, he feels this burning pain, like he's being cut down, and then he feels like his body's on fire. This is the moment that Sarana is killed by the contractor. This bit right here, where, this is the moment Sarana was unfortunately turned into the ashes of destiny. Now, return to Cecilia, walking through the marsh, and she finds another Daedric statue. There's 3 in the space of less than an hour, and she's putting she's like, these things act like magnets, sort of homing beacons towards Daedra and their worshippers and their creatures. Maybe the reason why this place is full of the dead isn't because of what happened 400 years ago with the Wolf Queen, but Could be because that statue kind of brings up all the corpses and makes them come towards her statue and fill the marsh with rotten corpses and stuff like that. And that's just a side idea. It's maybe might be a thing in Elder Scrolls lore, but it just feels right. It feels more natural, like how Molag Bal's worshippers end up at his shrine and all that sort of crap. Had to go back for a previous save for this one. That was episode 19 or 18 save. That was the one. And she's, walking down, she sees Delora and she sees Starter and she's like, oh shit, these annoying bitches. And it annoys her even more now because when she sees them, she kind of puts two and two together while they're following her. And especially when Minerva says what she says, she doesn't believe what Minerva says because there's no way in hell or oblivion that, the Crusader was the Mad God. But then the Mad God's followers start following her around to protect her, and it just kind of puts that thought into her head that maybe Minerva's right. She does not like that idea one bit because, she was having sex with the Crusader during that time, and she'd see him cry, she'd see him get angry, she'd see him dead himself, do all the human things we do. And any story when it comes to demons or angels or anything, when they take our form, they can't be human because they don't know what it means to be human. And it's the same thing with the Daedra. They can look like us, but they can't be us. They have got no idea what it means to be human, sort of thing. And that's kind of what I go with that one. So Cecilia knows that it's not right. It's definitely not the Mad God that she was with, but there's a part of her brain just lingering going, maybe, but no, there's no way, fuck that. But we're essentially here to find a cure for Centaurus to see if it's even worth changing him because of what Serana said, that Blade could have cursed him, and if they cure him, they could kill him. She brings up this gigantic Khajiit, which is awesome armor. I think it's called the Lunar Guard armor, if you're interested in that sort of mod. The axe and armor comes separately. She brings up a little conversation about the war and that how the Imperials defended off against these big ass monsters of the Daedra. And she used to quote, it's not the fight and the dog, it's a fight. It's not the dog and the fight, it's the fight and the dog sort of thing. And that's a cool little quote. And then she opens the door and she closes it and she sees a new sort of supporting character dead on the floor. And that's from obviously episode 18. She took injury during the battle but refused to get healed. And then she went to sleep and she died in her sleep because she bled out. Kind of sad. I mean, I really liked her. She's actually my lock screen saver because when I lock my computer and I go off and I come back, she's actually on my she's her, Julia Quintilius. And we get to see Freya and she shaved her head and Cecilia's like, bro, you have absolutely fucked up. Like, those dreadlocks took her years to create and you've just took it away. When she wakes up, she's going to kill you. And I just kind of imagine that, like, if Freya wakes up and Minerva's there and she feels her head and she gets angry, that Minerva just lifts up her shirt and shows her tits off, just like kind of calm Freya. Because I've been told Freya's a deviant by also Carter, that she's, if she was a bloke, she'd be an absolute pervert, a sexual abuse sort of individual. So I'm like, yeah, right, yeah, fair enough. She's kind of very Australian in a female body. That's not to say that we're sexual deviants. I'm just going to make this worse if I keep talking. But anyway, Cecilia kind of says it while she's here. And Minerva's got some insight. She's a very wise character. She's like 80 or 70 years old or some shit. Elves age weird in this game. They age normally until they're like 18, then all of a sudden they slow down, which is just stupid. But anyway, it gets into a conversation where Cecilia gets a bit upset and she's like, maybe I should just kill him. I haven't got time for this. I need to get back to Ragni with the sort of threat sort of thing. Tonrak obviously makes a bit of fun about her. Instead of cracking the shits like Cecilia normally does, she throws it back. And I was like, yeah, Cecilia's got to learn from all this that, Tonrak's a bit of a shit stirrer. So, she finally throws it back at him. She plays the game. And, Tonrak's like, well played. I'll pay that one. And they get back to the conversation. Minerva's like, dude, shut up. Like, how am I sleeping with you? How do I like you? You're an absolute fucking idiot. But they get back to their serious conversation about Centaurus. And, Cecilia's like, I should probably just kill him. And, there's some serious shit going through her head with the worry of, Serana's blood being out there and leaving Ragni alone when she feels like she really shouldn't. And obviously she really shouldn't have they'll all come to regret this sort of thing later on, of course, because Minerva was the one that convinced her to go, and Tonrak delivered her there but didn't stay with her. Sigurd obviously decided to stay with Karsten and eat the food, and Minerva was the one that sent... Cecilia was the one that sent Serana off and left with Ragni undefended. So it all comes down to regret and things like that, and especially Centaurus, he's going to have a lot of guilt on his heart because of it. So a lot of them are going to suffer a lot of guilt and self-anger at this sort of thing which happens with episode 20. But, yeah, Cecilia's like, I should just kill the dude. And Minerva, she's like, what the fuck? Listen to yourself. And they both cracked the shits at Cecilia because, like, that was some, like, heinous shit to say. And they're both backing up Centaurus here. Like, dude, we went through, all this shit. We all voted for Centaurus. And you gave Ragnar your word that you would train him, and if he fails and he dies, and we understand that, we will understand that. But just murdering before you give him a shot, that's just some heinous shit. And, yeah, it's just, they both get up, which is kind of thing like that none of them would do, because no one's going to be brave enough to stir up the Dark Knight to piss her off. And you see the kind of regret and washing over Cecilia. She's like, yeah, they're right. I'm worried. I'm scared. And when people are scared, they don't act right. They don't behave normally. And that's just kind of what Cecilia's doing right now. She's acting irrationally because she's scared. She's scared of the blood. She's scared of leaving Ragni behind. And she's also, has Freya unconscious on the ground. The girl she raised into a woman. And there's a lot of shit going on in her head. And obviously she's all over the place. In this episode, you kind of see that. She's kind of a little bit emotionally unstable, which is fair and fine. But they put her back on course. It's like, look, take the blade. If it does nothing, cure him. Get him cured. If it does do something, just take him and deal with it. And Cecilia's like, yeah, you guys are right. I'm only going to spend 2 weeks. And 2 weeks is nowhere near enough time to really train a vampire. I mean, it took, 0 to 7 months, and she was impressive. She was like a prodigy. But you'd need years. I mean, it took Cecilia probably like 10 years to start working with people as a vampire. She had to hide and lurk in the shadows and kill people before she felt like she was trained. She'll get into that much later on, but she's like 2 weeks. By 2 weeks, I'll know if he has what it takes to survive the sun, to survive the bloodlust, or if he's just going to lose it and I just put him down, sort of thing. But she's given herself a time frame, and it's going to be 2 weeks to train Centaurus to know if he's batshit crazy or if he can survive what's to come with him. That's if he can obviously be cured or not, but as we know, it doesn't actually work out. The blade still has a hold on him. It's, turning him into a vampire has only postponed the curse. It's only stopped it. It's only halted it. It hasn't removed it. And the trick of Molag Bol, he's got your soul either way. Either you die to the curse or you die to vampirism and he takes your soul. But there's no using one of Molag's shortcuts to beat the other. No, you've ended up bottlenecking yourself, and you've got to deal with the one that helps you out the most. And that's obviously staying as a vampire, because you have strength and you have life. With the other one, you just have weakness and you perish. We get back to Julia here. I didn't actually plan on having her killed, and I thought, why not? Why not have her die off? Because it kind of what happens in battles. People refuse medical help because they think others deserve it more. And I've talked about, she's been a bit in the last projects where she's talked about her life and her regrets, and that she joined the Empire to fight and die as a soldier, not as some drunkard in a tavern. And she got what she wanted. It was part of her that she thought others deserved more life than her, and this is kind of how she wanted to die. She wanted to die in battle, and she wasn't killed in battle, but she died as a result of it from bleeding out. She was flirting with Rognik all night, telling him to jump inside of her sheets, have a one last glorious night of someone being inside of her. Didn't happen because he's a married man, he's a man of faith and all that sort of stuff, and she went to sleep and she just never woke back up. They went to go bury the dead, and lunchtime came around and Rognik remembered her and went to go move her, and she was cold. And that sort of thing. And this is where kind of Cecilia talks about really reconnecting with her past life, that she gives us some sort of Vanguard right. Vanguard has died, so I like to see them as Mandalorians in a way, Vanguards. She gives her a last right from one Vanguard to another. And Cecilia sees a lot of herself in her. They got the same voice. Cecilia going to see what, that an older Imperial lady that fights hard and is willing to die, and both of them are exactly the same in a way. Like Cecilia's like physically like 24, but she's been alive for a long time, so she is an old girl. But she saw a lot of familiarity between her and Julia, and you know, it's time that Centaurus wanted to go back inside the tomb to grab his old weapons to defend himself with, but that didn't happen because wasn't going to need the weapons, but just in case that Cecilia couldn't cure him, she took the blade from Julia, you know, a soldier's weapon, and was to give it to Centaurus just in case, you know, he couldn't be cured. And so he'd have a Vanguard's blade that he was after, and the blade of an old friend, you know, because he like, you know, I remember his stories before the Civil War was put on hold, where he talked about Julia being like a famous hero in the Imperial City battle, and the retaking of it, and he talks up a lot as she's kind of a legend. And she just quietly dies in the background. I mean, not everyone needs to die on screen, and sometimes they just die in the background or result of storytelling and things like that. But Julia Quintilius, her story has come to an end, and the person under her might take control of the Imperial Legion. And I've been kind of talking about the fan that made that, one of my subscribers, and you might have guessed him. He's got blonde hair, blue eyes, and he's got a bit of a shazzy beard, and his name is Karsten. Cecilia mentions right here that she felt her heartbeat rise, you know, that, like, she had to take a breath, she had to slow down. And that's the sort of moment where Ragni gets attacked, and they all kind of feel this, but they're not all together at the same time. Obviously Ragni, Tonrak and Minerva are, but she shows the blade to Centaurus, and his skin starts to burn, or his insides start to burn. And you see they kind of flare up, they kind of turn black-red, and it shows them that the curse is still active, and curing him would instantly kill him. This blade will stay on Cecilia's hip for a while, because it's obviously going to make Centaurus weak if he goes bad, because she understands that this is Serana's power, and this could backfire, and you know, if he loses his shit, he could kill them both with his raw power. And this blade's obviously going to make him quite weak. And I mean, it's kind of like a kryptonite to him, you know, if it gets close to him, it's going to hurt. And so that's kind of why she keeps a blade on her hip, just to make sure that if he does play up, he can be dealt with. And the new blade, obviously, is given to him because, well, he's going to need it for his training. I mean, I really want Cecilia to be an absolute bitch towards him, you know, like really tough love, sort of either make it or break it. And then we have Molag Bal watching him walk off on the adventure of training. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little background video. I do all these and sometimes I forget to do them, but that's that one. I mean, what I plan to do next is actually a Dragon Hunters episode, sort of background thing, telling the story of Skyrim in the background of any of the main characters, something I can do to figure out what I do next. I've got some ideas, you know, of today actually. I thought about what I could do with Ragni's story going forward after what's happened to her. But again, that's for a little bit later. I think at the very start of this new journey for her, it's going to be very quiet, very depressing, very hollow, like your soul's been ripped out. And this is where I take sort of the Fellowship of the Ring method, and the team breaks up and you get more, not just of Frodo being the absolute #1 character, but the other teammates sort of taking charge and having to deal with the events of what's going on and things like that. But again, I just want to do a little bit of a fun Dragon Hunters one, sort of in the background. And do that, and by then, hopefully I've got a good enough idea to where to really start with Ragni's story after the Red Wedding of 16th of Second Seed. Anyway, I'm out of here. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in another video. Look after yourselves.